Welcome to the 15th Annual Galactic Wilderness Survival Challenge, broadcasting live from the pristine forests of Verdania Prime, where beings from across the galaxy come to prove their species has what it takes to survive in the wild using nothing but their wits, basic tools, and whatever nature provides. Our host, the ever-enthusiastic Vrex Goldentail, practically vibrates with excitement as he addresses the camera. Greetings, survival enthusiasts. Today we witness 4 brave contestants attempt to outlast each other in Verdania's unforgiving wilderness for 7 standard days. The winner receives 1 million galactic credits and bragging rights across 16 star systems. Let me introduce you to our contestants, each representing the peak of their species' survival capabilities. First up is Zephyr Scaleheart, a 7-foot-tall draconian with emerald scales and an ego twice his size. Zephyr has been preparing for this challenge for 3 years, studying advanced tactical manuals and survival guides. He carries himself like a military general planning a campaign, which is ironic considering he's never actually been camping. His strategy involves establishing territorial dominance and resource monopolization. Zephyr confidently declares to the camera, "My ancestors conquered 12 star systems. A few trees will not defeat me." Next, we have Gloop, whose species name roughly translates to the eternally worried ones. Gloop resembles a translucent blue jellyfish crossed with a very anxious pudding. They spent the last 6 months attending survival seminars, reading every manual and practicing knot tying until their pseudopods cramped. Gloop's strategy is thorough preparation and careful analysis of every possible scenario. "I have memorized 47 edible plant species and 33 water purification techniques," Gloop bubbles nervously. What could go wrong? Our third contestant is Korak of the Hive Worlds, a 6-foot-tall mantis-like creature whose species hasn't met a problem they couldn't solve through aggressive military tactics. Korak treats this survival challenge like an invasion of enemy territory. He's brought standard-issue combat rations, a tactical shovel, and an attitude that suggests he plans to court-martial the local wildlife. "The forest is the enemy," he clicks through his mandibles. "I will establish a beachhead and hold position until victory is achieved." And finally, we have our wild card entry, Jake Thompson, representing Earth. Jake is a 32-year-old human who signed up for the challenge after seeing an advertisement on his planet's information network. When asked about his survival experience, Jake shrugged and said, "I go camping pretty much every weekend." How hard could this be? Jake stands about average height for his species, wearing worn outdoor clothing and carrying what appears to be a standard camping backpack. Unlike the other contestants who arrived with military precision or nervous energy, Jake seems remarkably relaxed. He's actually smiling, which the other contestants find deeply unsettling. The production crew interviewed Jake before the challenge began. When asked about his strategy, Jake replied, "Strategy? I don't know, find a good spot, set up camp, enjoy nature, maybe do some fishing if the streams are good." The other contestants exchanged glances that clearly said, this human has no idea what he's gotten himself into. What none of them realized was that Jake had packed his gear with the same casual efficiency he used for weekend trips to state parks. His backpack contained items that seemed perfectly reasonable to any human. A multi-tool, rope, basic camping equipment, and what he called the usual stuff. To alien eyes, it looked primitive and insufficient. Zephyr examined Jake's gear with barely concealed disdain. "Your equipment appears quite basic, human. Are you certain you brought adequate supplies?" Jake hefted his pack with practiced ease. "Oh yeah, this should be plenty. I actually packed light since I wasn't sure about the weight restrictions." The aliens shared another look. This human was either incredibly naive or hiding some secret survival technique. Given humanity's reputation for being a relatively young and technologically dependent species, naive seemed more likely. As the contestants gathered at the starting point, Vrex delivered the final rules. Contestants will be dropped at separate locations within a 50-kilometer radius. You must survive for 7 days using only what you carry and what the forest provides. Emergency beacons are provided for life-threatening situations only. The last contestant remaining wins! The transport ships prepared for departure. Jake waved cheerfully at the cameras while the other contestants made final equipment checks and strategic calculations. What nobody knew was that Jake Thompson wasn't just any human. He was a human who had grown up camping with his grandfather, had spent college summers as a camp counselor, and whose idea of a relaxing vacation involved backpacking through national parks. To Jake, this wasn't a survival challenge. This was a free week in the woods with decent weather and no work emails. The ships lifted off, carrying our contestants to their respective starting points. The real challenge was about to begin, though not in the way anyone expected. Day 1 of the Galactic Wilderness Survival Challenge, and our documentary crews are getting exactly the kind of dramatic footage they were hoping for, just not from the contestant they expected. Let's check in with Zephyr first, shall we? Our overconfident draconian has selected what he calls strategically advantageous high ground, a rocky outcropping that provides excellent views and absolutely zero protection from Verdania's evening winds. Zephyr begins constructing what he confidently describes as a shelter befitting my superior intellect. 3 hours later, Zephyr is standing in the ruins of what can generously be called a stick-based catastrophe. His architectural masterpiece has collapsed twice, once nearly crushing him in the process. The rocks he chose for their strategic value turn out to be excellent at conducting cold, and his attempt to start a fire resulted in singed eyebrows and a lot of creative draconian profanity. "This is merely a tactical setback," Zephyr announces to the camera crew while shivering and picking twigs out of his scales. "I am analyzing the structural failures for future improvement." What he's actually doing is seriously questioning whether 3 years of reading survival manuals while sitting in a climate-controlled library really counts as preparation. Meanwhile, Gloop has managed to find what appeared to be the perfect campsite near a water source. Unfortunately, what looked like solid ground to Gloop's species turned out to be Verdania's version of quicksand, a muddy bog that has now trapped our gelatinous friend up to their middle section. "This is not in any of the manuals," Gloop wails, flailing their pseudopods in a panic. Chapter 12 clearly stated that testing ground stability involves probing with a stick, but it said nothing about mud that actively tries to consume you. The camera crew watches with professional detachment as Gloop slowly sinks while reciting increasingly frantic survival tips that clearly don't apply to their current situation. Emergency Protocol 7 suggests remaining calm and conserving energy, but Emergency Protocol 12 advises immediate action to escape entrapment. These contradict each other. How do I choose? Korak, true to form, has declared war on the local ecosystem. His establishing a beachhead strategy has devolved into a 3-hour battle against what he perceived as hostile wildlife. In reality, Korak has been fighting a territorial dispute with a family of creatures that look like rainbow-colored squirrels but apparently have the attitude of honey badgers. Enemy forces are more numerous than intelligence suggested, Korak reports while sporting several colorful bite marks. They employ guerrilla tactics and show no respect for proper combat protocols. I have been forced to retreat and re-establish defensive positions. His tactical shovel lies bent and broken after he attempted to dig a foxhole in what turned out to be solid rock, covered with a thin layer of soil. His combat rations remain unopened because he's been too busy defending his position to eat, and his military precision has been reduced to hiding behind a fallen log while rainbow squirrels chatter mockingly from the trees above. And then there's Jake. The documentary crew assigned to follow the human lost track of him approximately 30 minutes after drop-off. Their aerial footage shows Jake walking purposefully into the forest with his pack, disappearing under the canopy, and then nothing. No emergency beacon activation, no dramatic struggles, no footage worth broadcasting. "We're getting some audio from his general direction," reports camera operator Blinth, adjusting their equipment. "Sounds like, is that hammering?" Indeed, echoing through the forest from Jake's approximate location comes the rhythmic sound of what could be construction work. Thunk, 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 pause, thunk, thunk, thunk. The sound is accompanied by what might be human humming, though it's hard to tell at this distance. "Impossible," declares producer Quintex. "He can't be building anything substantial. Humans are supposed to be technologically dependent. He probably found a rock and is trying to crack nuts or something primitive like that." The sounds continue throughout the afternoon. Hammering, sawing noises, and at one point, what distinctly sounds like drilling. The crew assumes their audio equipment is malfunctioning because there's no way a human with basic camping gear could produce sounds that organized and mechanical. "Should we investigate?" asks camera operator Blythe. "No, let's focus on the real competitors," Quintex decides. "The human will probably activate his emergency beacon by tonight. We need dramatic footage of actual survival challenges." So they don't investigate. They focus on Zephyr's continued architectural failures, Gloop's increasingly panicked bog escape attempts, and Korak's ongoing squirrel war. All the while, those mysterious construction sounds echo from Jake's section of the forest. As evening approaches, our 3 visible contestants are having the authentic wilderness survival experience everyone expected. Zephyr is cold, hungry, and sleeping under a lean-to that looks like it was designed by a drunk architect. Gloop has finally extracted themselves from the bog but is now covered in mud and thoroughly traumatized by the experience. Korak has achieved a tactical stalemate with the rainbow squirrels and is eating cold combat rations while maintaining constant vigils. Squirrel Tribe, Conceptors, and Warhammers have acquired the warrior combat rations. The hammering from Jake's direction has stopped, replaced by what sounds suspiciously like a generator starting up, but that's clearly impossible, so the production crew decides their equipment is definitely malfunctioning. Day 1 analysis, announces host Vrex Goldentail to the cameras. Our contestants are facing the harsh realities of wilderness survival. Zephyr struggles with basic shelter construction, Gloop learns that preparation means nothing without practical application, and Korak discovers that military tactics don't translate well to forest living. As for our human contestant, well, we assume he's having similar difficulties, though our technical difficulties prevent us from getting clear footage of his situation. What they don't show the audience is that the technical difficulties include their equipment picking up what sounds like running water, some kind of electrical humming, and at one point what could only be described as smooth jazz playing quietly in the background. But that's impossible, right? It's just a human with a backpack in the woods. How complicated could it be? Day 3 of the Galactic Wilderness Survival Challenge, and our alien contestants are living the authentic survival experience that viewers across the galaxy tune in to watch. Which is to say, they're miserable, hungry, and questioning their life choices. Zephyr has managed to construct what he generously calls a tactical shelter, though it bears a striking resemblance to a pile of sticks held together by spite and draconian stubbornness. He's been surviving on a diet of berries that may or may not be poisonous. It's hard to tell since he's been too proud to admit he can't identify half the plant life on this planet. His scales have lost their lustrous sheen, and he's developed a nervous tic that involves muttering tactical assessments under his breath. Gloop has established what they call a safe zone, approximately 50 meters from any mud, water, or anything that looks remotely bog-like. Unfortunately, this has left them in a barren, rocky area with no shelter and limited food sources. They've been surviving on morning dew and their own anxiety, which, to be fair, Gloop produces in abundant quantities. Their translucent form has taken on a distinctly gray tinge that suggests dehydration and existential dread. Korak has achieved what military strategists might call a Pyrrhic victory over the rainbow squirrel forces, having successfully claimed a small clearing through sheer determination and several tactical retreats. His combat rations are running low, his equipment is damaged, and he's developed an involuntary flinch response to any rustling in the trees above. The squirrels have apparently regrouped and are conducting psychological warfare through strategic nut-dropping campaigns. Perhaps, suggests producer Quintex, watching the footage of 3 increasingly desperate aliens, we should check on the human, for completeness. Camera operator Blinth adjusts their equipment. The audio anomalies from his sector have continued. Yesterday we picked up what sounded like a weather report. His equipment malfunction. Quintex waved dismissively. But yes, let's get footage of his inevitable elimination. The audience enjoys seeing overconfident species get humbled by nature. The camera crew flies toward Jake's last known location, expecting to find either an activated emergency beacon or a dejected human sitting next to a failed shelter. What they find instead defies every assumption they've made about human survival capabilities. Rising through the forest canopy is a structure that can only be described as a wooden fortress. Not a shelter, not a lean-to, a honest-to-goodness multi-level construction with what appears to be a shingled roof, glass windows, and... is that a satellite dish? I think our equipment is working fine, camera operator Blinth says weakly. They descend for a closer look, and the structure becomes even more impossible. The main building stands 2 stories high, constructed from precisely cut and fitted logs. Solar panels glint on the south-facing roof. A small windmill turns lazily in the breeze. Garden plots with neat rows of vegetables stretch across a cleared area. There's a workshop, a storage shed, what looks suspiciously like a hot tub, and running water flowing through a system of bamboo pipes. Jake Thompson emerges from his fortress, wearing clean clothes, carrying a steaming mug, and looking like he just stepped out of a wilderness resort brochure. "Oh, hey there!" Jake waves cheerfully at the camera crew. "How's it going? You guys want some lemonade? I just made a fresh pitcher." The camera crew hovers in stunned silence for approximately 30 seconds before producer Quintex manages to sputter, "What? What is this?" "This?" Jake gestures at his construction project with casual pride. "This is my campsite. Pretty nice spot, right? Good southern exposure, close to the stream, level ground. Really lucked out with the location. Your campsite, camera operator Blinth repeats slowly, has solar panels. Well, yeah, Jake says, as if this should be obvious. How else would I charge my devices? The solar charger I brought is great for phones and small electronics, but I wanted to run some lights and maybe a small fridge, so I built a supplemental system. The local wood is perfect for construction, by the way. Reminds me of the oak forests back home. You built a fridge? Quintex's voice has risen several octaves. Just a small one, Jake explains, leading them toward what is unmistakably a functioning refrigeration unit, constructed from local materials and what appears to be salvaged cooling elements. Uses the same principle as a solar cooler, but I improved the insulation with local clay and some thermal regulation techniques I learned from YouTube. The tour continues, and it becomes clear that Jake hasn't just built a shelter, he's established a small civilization. The water system includes filtration, heating, and even a primitive shower. The workshop contains handcrafted tools and what looks suspiciously like a small forge. The garden is already producing vegetables, somehow accelerated through techniques that would make agricultural scientists weep with envy. The fishing's been great, Jake continues conversationally, pointing to a smokehouse where several fish are curing. The stream's full of something that tastes like trout but twice as meaty. And check this out. He leads them to what can only be described as a primitive but functional electrical grid. I rigged up a water wheel for backup power when the solar and wind aren't enough. Keeps the essential systems running 24/7. Producer Quintex stares at the water wheel, which is indeed turning steadily and generating measurable electrical current. How? How did you learn to do this? Jake shrugs. Camping, mostly. YouTube University for the technical stuff. My grandfather taught me basic woodworking when I was a kid. You pick things up, you know? Plus, I majored in engineering before switching to accounting, so the principles aren't too complicated. Engineering, Quintex repeats faintly. Oh, nothing fancy, just civil engineering with a focus on sustainable systems. But I barely use any of that stuff. This is all pretty basic camping techniques, really. At this point, the other contestants begin arriving. They'd been drawn by the inexplicable presence of electrical lighting visible through the forest at night, and by rumors of running water that seemed too impossible to believe. Zephyr arrives first, his proud draconian bearing, somewhat diminished by 3 days of eating questionable berries and sleeping under a structure that violates several laws of physics. He stops dead when he sees Jake's compound. What sorcery is this? Zephyr demands, though his voice lacks its usual authority. No sorcery, Jake replies cheerfully. Just camping. You look tired, buddy. Want to take a shower? The water's nice and hot. Gloop arrives next, their gelatinous form practically deflating with relief at the sight of clean water and actual civilization. This is not possible, they bubble weakly. This violates every principle of wilderness survival. Does it? Jake asks genuinely. I mean, I'm surviving in the wilderness. Seems to be working pretty well. Korak approaches cautiously, his military training warring with his desperate need for a decent meal and a safe place to sleep. What are your defensive capabilities? He clicks suspiciously. Jake considers this seriously. Well, there's motion sensor lighting around the perimeter, and I've got a pretty good view from the upper level. Plus, I made friends with the local wildlife. As if summoned, several rainbow squirrels emerge from the trees, chittering happily and accepting offered nuts from Jake's hand. Korak stares in horror. You negotiated with the enemy? Enemy? Jake looks confused. These guys are awesome, great pest control, and they're really good at spotting weather changes. That's how I knew to get the roof finished before yesterday's storm. The camera crew captures the moment when 3 of the galaxy's supposedly superior survival specialists realize they've been completely and utterly outclassed by a human accountant who brought a backpack and some weekend camping experience. So, Jake says, oblivious to the existential crisis he's causing, who wants dinner? I'm grilling tonight, and I've got plenty for everyone. What follows is perhaps the most thorough tour of human problem-solving ever documented by galactic media. Jake, completely unaware that he's shattering the fundamental assumptions of 3 separate species about wilderness survival, begins what he calls showing off the campsite. Let's start with the basics, Jake says, leading the group toward his main structure. Water, power, shelter, food. You get those 4 things sorted, everything else is just comfort improvements. The main building reveals itself to be even more sophisticated up close. The logs are perfectly fitted with hand-carved joints that would make master carpenters jealous. The foundation includes proper drainage and what appears to be a primitive but effective climate control system. See, the thing about camping, Jake explains while opening what is unmistakably a front door complete with hinges and a handle, is that there's no point in being miserable. I mean, you're out here to enjoy nature, right? So I always start with making sure I'll be comfortable. Inside, the structure defies every expectation of wilderness accommodation. The first floor contains a living area with handmade furniture, a kitchen area with running water and what can only be described as a wood fire range with multiple cooking surfaces, and a workshop space filled with precisely crafted tools. The insulation is mostly local clay mixed with dried grass. Jake continues conversationally. Same technique humans have been using for thousands of years, just with some modern improvements for thermal efficiency. Keeps it cool during the day, warm at night. Zephyr runs a scaled finger along the smooth clay walls, his tactical mind struggling to process the engineering involved. How long did this construction take? Oh, most of it was done by the end of the first day, Jake replies casually. Had to work fast to beat the weather. The detail work and improvements have been ongoing, but the basic structure was pretty quick once I had the foundation set. How many days? Gloop repeats faintly. You constructed this fortress in 1 day. Well, the main shell anyway. The upper level took a bit longer. Jake leads them to a handcrafted staircase that spirals up to the second floor. This is the observation deck and guest quarters. Figured if anyone else needed shelter, I should have space. The upper level contains what can only be described as guest bedrooms with actual beds, complete with mattresses crafted from local materials that somehow manage to be both supportive and comfortable. Large windows provide panoramic views of the surrounding forest, and a small balcony overlooks the entire compound. The view up here is perfect for weather watching, Jake explains, pointing to a handmade weather monitoring station complete with wind vane, barometer, and rain gauge. Plus, it's great for stargazing. Verdania's got 3 moons, so the night sky is amazing. Korak examines the balcony's construction with professional interest. This elevated position provides excellent tactical advantages, superior sight lines, defensive positioning, multiple escape routes. I guess, Jake says thoughtfully. Mostly I just like watching the sunrise with my coffee. They descend back to ground level, where Jake begins the tour of his external systems. The water management alone represents an engineering feat that would challenge most modern civilizations. Water's the big one, Jake explains, leading them to what appears to be a small dam built across a section of the stream. You need clean drinking water, water for washing, water for cooking, and ideally hot water because cold showers are just awful. So, I diverted part of the stream through a filtration system. The filtration system involves multiple stages of sand, charcoal, and cloth filters, culminating in a solar heating system that provides genuinely hot running water throughout the compound. The hot tub was kind of an accident, Jake admits, gesturing to what is indeed a functioning hot tub carved from local stone and lined with some kind of waterproof material. I was experimenting with thermal heating for the shower system, and I had all this extra capacity, so I figured why not? The agricultural system represents perhaps the most impossible achievement of all. Jake has somehow managed to establish a thriving garden in 3 days that appears to be producing vegetables at an accelerated rate. The local soil is incredibly fertile, Jake explains, kneeling down to show them root vegetables that are clearly mature despite being planted recently. Way better than anything back home. Plus, the native beneficial bacteria seem to love earth plants. I've never seen growth rates like this. Earth plants? Quintex interrupts. You brought seeds from your home planet. Oh no, Jake laughs. That would be cheating. These are all local varieties that I've been selectively cultivating. See, most planets develop similar nutritional plants through parallel evolution. You just have to know what to look for and how to encourage the traits you want. He leads them through rows of vegetables that look familiar enough to be edible but clearly aren't Earth species. This one tastes like a cross between potatoes and sweet corn. That leafy one is basically space spinach but with better flavor. And these fruits are like apples mixed with mangoes. The workshop area reveals the true scope of Jake's engineering prowess. Hand-forged tools hang from carefully organized racks. A small but functional forge glows with carefully maintained coals. Work surfaces display projects in various stages of completion, from additional furniture to what appears to be a more sophisticated water wheel design. The forge was necessary for making proper tools, Jake explains matter-of-factly. You can only do so much with basic camping equipment, but once you have the right tools, everything else becomes pretty straightforward. Gloop examines a perfectly balanced hammer that Jake apparently forged from local metal ore. You located and processed metal ore in 3 days? The stream bed has pretty good iron deposits, Jake says. Nothing fancy, just basic blacksmithing. My grandfather taught me the fundamentals when I was 12. Haven't done much of it lately, but it's like riding a bicycle. The power generation system represents the culmination of human over-engineering. Solar panels that Jake somehow constructed from local materials work in conjunction with the water wheel and a small wind turbine to provide what appears to be reliable electrical power throughout the compound. The electrical system is pretty basic, Jake explains while checking what looks suspiciously like a circuit breaker panel crafted from wood and metal components. Just enough to run lights, a small refrigeration unit, and some tools. The backup systems ensure power even during storms or low wind periods. You built solar panels, Korak states flatly, from forest materials. Well, sort of, Jake hedges. I had a small portable solar charger in my pack, and I reverse-engineered the basic principles. The local crystal formations have some photovoltaic properties, so I was able to scale up the concept. It's not as efficient as manufactured panels, but it gets the job done. At this point, the 3 alien contestants are experiencing what can only be described as species-wide imposter syndrome. Everything they thought they knew about wilderness survival has been revealed as hopelessly primitive compared to human basic camping. But how? Zephyr finally manages to ask. How does your species possess such advanced survival capabilities? Jake considers this seriously while tending to his evening cooking fire, which has been constructed with engineering precision to provide multiple cooking temperatures and perfect smoke control for food preparation. I don't think they're particularly advanced, he says thoughtfully. Humans have just been practicing survival scenarios for fun for thousands of years. We call it camping, but really it's just continuous refinement of techniques for living comfortably in natural environments. For fun? Gloop repeats weakly. Yeah, recreation, Jake confirms, seasoning what appears to be a gourmet meal prepared from local ingredients. Families go camping on weekends, kids learn basic survival skills at summer camps, college students go backpacking through wilderness areas during breaks, military personnel do survival training. But most of us learn this stuff just because it's enjoyable. Your species practices survival techniques recreationally, Korak summarizes, his mandibles clicking in what might be admiration or horror. Sure, Jake says. There's whole industries built around it. Specialized equipment, guidebooks, video tutorials, camping gear stores. Most humans know at least basic wilderness skills because we do it for relaxation. The implications sink in slowly. Humanity's primitive reputation comes from the fact that they never stopped practicing the survival skills that other species abandoned when they developed advanced technology. What looks primitive to alien observers is actually thousands of years of continuous refinement and improvement. So when you said this was basic camping, Zephyr says slowly, you meant basic for humans. Well, yeah, Jake replies, plating what smells like a restaurant-quality dinner. I mean, I didn't even bring my good camping gear. This is more like backpacking equipment. If I was doing serious camping, I'd have brought the portable shower, better cooking equipment, maybe a small generator. There are higher levels of human camping, Gloop whispers. Oh sure, Jake says cheerfully. RV camping, glamping, base camping for mountain expeditions. Some people build semi-permanent cabins in wilderness areas just for weekend retreats. My neighbor back home has a place in the mountains with satellite internet and a full workshop. The 3 aliens exchange looks that communicate a shared realization. They haven't just been outclassed by human survival skills. They've been outclassed by human recreational activities. Jake isn't demonstrating the peak of his species' capabilities. He's demonstrating what humans consider a relaxing hobby. Now, Jake says, serving plates of food that somehow manages to be both wilderness appropriate and restaurant quality. Who wants to hear about the improvements I'm planning for tomorrow? The arrival of the official judging committee at dawn on day 4 creates what will later be remembered as the most awkward moment in Galactic Wilderness Survival Challenge history. The 3-member panel, consisting of survival experts from different star systems, approaches Jake's compound expecting to find a human contestant in various stages of elimination worthiness plus desperation. Instead, they find Jake Thompson sitting on his handcrafted porch, drinking coffee from a ceramic mug he apparently made himself, reading what appears to be a morning weather report generated by his meteorological station, while his 3 alien competitors enjoy what can only be described as a luxury wilderness resort experience. Chief Judge Tylex, a distinguished member of the Regillian Survival Academy, stops his hover platform mid-descent and stares at the scene below. There appears to be some mistake, he announces through the platform's communication system. We're looking for the human contestant's location. That's me, Jake waves cheerfully from below. "You're just in time for breakfast. Hope you're hungry." The judging platform descends slowly, as if the judges are afraid that sudden movements might cause the impossible scene before them to dissolve like a mirage. Judge Thylex, Judge Vortana of the Crystalline Collective, and Judge Chromax of the Void Territories disembark with the careful movements of beings whose fundamental worldview is under assault. "Mr. Thompson," Judge Thylex begins, consulting his official evaluation tablet with hands that shake slightly. "We are here to conduct your Day 4 survival assessment. However, there seems to be some irregularity in your, approach to the challenge." "Irregularity?" Jake sets down his coffee mug and stands with the easy movement of someone who has spent the last 4 days living in comfort rather than fighting for survival. "Everything going okay with the challenge? I mean, I know I'm not suffering as much as maybe you expected, but I'm definitely surviving." Judge Vortana, whose crystalline form typically reflects light in precise geometric patterns, is currently displaying the chaotic refractions of someone experiencing cognitive dissonance. "Mr. Thompson, you appear to have constructed what can only be classified as permanent settlement infrastructure." "Well, semi-permanent," Jake corrects thoughtfully. "I designed it to be easily disassembled when the challenge ends. Seemed like the environmentally responsible thing to do." "Disassembled," Judge Chromax repeats, in the deep, resonant voice characteristic of Void Territory beings. "You plan to dismantle this fortress?" "Sure," Jake says easily. "Most of it, anyway. I'll leave the water management system, since it actually improves the stream flow for local wildlife. But the buildings and power systems can come apart pretty easily. I used mostly friction joints and mechanical fasteners rather than permanent adhesives." The judges exchange glances that communicate several layers of professional panic. Judge Thylex clears his throat and begins reading from his official assessment guidelines. "According to challenge regulations, contestants must survive using only basic tools and natural resources found within the challenge environment. The use of advanced technology or pre-manufactured equipment beyond the approved basic survival kit is grounds for immediate disqualification." "Okay," Jake nods agreeably. "That makes sense. You don't want people bringing in outside advantages." "Mr. Thompson," Judge Vortana's crystalline form shifts to display what might be impatience or confusion. "You clearly possess advanced equipment. Solar power generation, metal forging capabilities, precision construction tools. These exceed the parameters of basic survival gear." "Do they?" Jake asks with genuine curiosity. "I mean, I brought a multi-tool, some rope, basic camping equipment. Everything else I made from materials I found here." He gestures toward his workshop area. "The forge is just rocks and clay. The tools I made with the forge. The solar collectors use local crystals and principles I learned from my portable charger." Judge Chromax consults his evaluation tablet with increasing agitation. "The regulations specify that contestants may bring only items listed in the approved basic survival kit. Portable solar chargers are not on this list." "Really?" Jake pulls out a device roughly the size of a paperback book. "This is pretty standard camping gear where I come from. I use it to charge my phone when I'm hiking. Figured it qualified as basic equipment." The 3 judges huddled together for an emergency consultation that involves a lot of urgent whispering and frantic tablet consulting. Meanwhile, Jake's 3 fellow contestants approach to offer their perspective on the situation. "If I may address the tribunal," Zephyr begins, his natural pompousness somewhat restored after a night of actual sleep and decent food, "I believe the humans' methods, while unprecedented, do comply with the technical requirements of the challenge." Judge Thylex looks up from the huddle. "Explain." "Has survived using materials found within the environment and tools within the approved parameters," Zephyr continues. "The fact that his survival techniques exceed our expectations does not necessarily constitute a violation of regulations." "Furthermore," Gloop adds, "their anxiety levels significantly reduced after experiencing human hospitality. Mr. Thompson's approach demonstrates superior adaptation to environmental challenges. Isn't adaptability the primary skill being evaluated?" Korak steps forward with military precision. "From a strategic perspective, the human has achieved total dominance of the tactical environment while maintaining resource sustainability and providing aid to allied forces. This represents exemplary survival leadership." The judges return to their huddle with increased urgency. The conversation becomes heated enough that several alien curse words filter through their attempted privacy, including what sounds like a Regelian phrase that roughly translates to bureaucratic nightmare of cosmic proportions. Finally, Judge Thylex emerges from the consultation and approaches Jake with the expression of someone who has been asked to rule on whether water is wet. Mr. Thompson, after reviewing the challenge regulations, we find ourselves in an unprecedented situation. Your methods are highly unusual, but we cannot identify any specific rule violations. Cool, Jake replies. So we're all good? However, Judge Vortana interjects, we must question whether your approach truly represents wilderness survival or constitutes something entirely different. Different how? Jake asks. Judge Cromax consults his tablet again. Wilderness survival traditionally involves enduring hardship while maintaining basic life functions with minimal resources. Your approach appears to involve establishing a thriving micro-civilization with advanced infrastructure. Jake considers this seriously. I mean, both approaches achieve the goal of surviving in the wilderness, right? I just chose to be comfortable while doing it. Seems more efficient than suffering unnecessarily. But the suffering is traditionally considered part of the challenge, Judge Thylex explains weakly. Well, Jake asks with genuine puzzlement, the challenge is to survive, not to suffer. If I can survive comfortably while also helping other contestants survive comfortably, isn't that a better outcome for everyone? The judges realize they're facing a fundamental philosophical challenge to the entire concept of survival competitions. Jake hasn't just beaten the challenge. He's redefined what success looks like in a way that makes traditional approaches seem pointlessly masochistic. There is also the matter of your apparent construction timeline, Judge Vortana continues. Establishing this level of infrastructure typically requires extended time periods and multiple individuals. Not if you know what you're doing and plan efficiently, Jake responds. Plus, human construction techniques are optimized for speed when necessary. We've been building emergency shelters and rapid infrastructure for thousands of years. Emergency shelters, Judge Cromax repeats faintly. Sure, natural disasters, military situations, exploration and colonization, humans get pretty good at building functional living spaces quickly when we need to. The judges exchange another series of looks that suggest they're beginning to understand that they haven't just encountered an individual overachiever, but a representative of a species whose baseline capabilities exceed their evaluation frameworks. After careful consideration, Judge Thylex announces formally, we find that contestant Jake Thompson has not violated any specific challenge regulations, despite employing methods that were unanticipated by the challenge designers. Furthermore, Judge Vortana adds, his survival metrics exceed all established benchmarks for success in wilderness environments. Additionally, Judge Cromax concludes, his provision of aid and support to fellow contestants demonstrates exemplary survival leadership and resource management. Jake nods approvingly. Great. So what happens now? Are we continuing the challenge, or is this the evaluation day? The judges huddle once more, this time with an air of resigned defeat. When they emerge, Judge Thylex carries himself with the dignity of someone announcing a decision that will require extensive paperwork and possibly therapy. Mr. Thompson, he declares formally, by unanimous decision of the judging panel, you are declared the winner of the 15th Annual Galactic Wilderness Survival Challenge. Awesome, Jake grins. That was fun, though I have to say, it didn't feel much like a challenge, more like a relaxing vacation. Yes, Judge Thylex replies weakly. We're beginning to understand that. The post-challenge interview takes place in Jake's compound, which has somehow become even more sophisticated overnight. While waiting for the judges to recover from their existential crisis, Jake apparently added what can only be described as a conference room complete with a handcrafted table, comfortable seating, and a presentation area with visual aids he carved from local wood. Host Vrex Goldentail, still struggling to process the footage his crew has captured, attempts to conduct what was supposed to be a standard winner's interview. Instead, he finds himself documenting what may be the most significant paradigm shift in galactic survival philosophy since the invention of emergency rations. So, Jake, Vrex begins, consulting notes that he's rewritten several times. For our viewing audience across 16 star systems, could you tell us a bit about your background? Clearly you have extensive survival training. Not really, Jake replies, accepting a cup of coffee from what appears to be an espresso machine he built that morning. I'm an accountant from Ohio. I do tax preparation, some bookkeeping, nothing too exciting. An accountant, Vex repeats slowly. From Ohio. Yeah, Columbus area. Pretty quiet place. I mostly do this kind of thing on weekends for fun. Vrex glances at his notes again, hoping they might have changed. When you say this kind of thing, you mean building advanced wilderness infrastructure? Well, camping, Jake clarifies, though I'll admit this was a bit more elaborate than my usual setup. Having a whole week really let me explore some ideas I'd been wanting to try. Dudas you'd been wanting to try, Vrex echoes, his professional composure beginning to crack. Yeah, like the integrated power grid and the accelerated agriculture system. Most camping trips are just weekends, so you don't have time for the really interesting projects. At this point, producer Quintex approaches with footage that will later become the most watched survival programming in galactic history. Jake, if I may ask, where exactly did you learn these techniques? Surely your planet has specialized survival academies. Oh, mostly YouTube, Jake replies casually. The silence that follows this statement stretches long enough for several nearby star systems to complete their orbital rotations. YouTube, producer Quintex finally manages. It's an educational platform on our information network, Jake explains helpfully. People share instructional videos about pretty much everything. There's tons of content about camping, bushcraft, sustainable living, that kind of thing. You learned to build a functioning civilization from instructional videos? Well, that and camping with my grandfather when I was a kid. Some stuff I picked up in engineering school. Trial and error, you know how it is. Jake shrugs, as if this should be perfectly reasonable. Plus, I watch a lot of those survival shows where people build cabins in Alaska. Really good techniques for cold weather construction. Survival shows, Vrex says weakly. Yeah, we have whole television channels dedicated to wilderness survival and construction projects. It's pretty popular entertainment back home. The implications of this revelation ripple through the interview team like a shockwave. Humanity's survival capabilities aren't the result of military training or specialized education. They're recreational entertainment consumed for fun by ordinary citizens. Jake, Vrex continues, his voice taking on the tone of someone asking a question they're not sure they want answered. What would you consider advanced survival techniques by human standards? Jake thinks about this seriously. Well, there are people who do multi-year wilderness living experiments. Homesteaders who build completely self-sufficient properties in remote areas. Military survival specialists who can establish forward operating bases in hostile environments. Some folks build underground bunker systems with hydroponics and closed-loop life support. People do this voluntarily? Producer Quintex interrupts. Oh, sure. There are reality shows about it, whole communities dedicated to off-grid living, preppers who treat it as a hobby. My neighbor back home has a cabin in the woods with better amenities than most space stations. Better amenities than space stations, Vrex repeats, his notes now resembling the scribblings of someone having a nervous breakdown. Yeah, he's got full internet, climate control, workshop space, entertainment systems, really nice setup. He goes there to relax on weekends. The three alien contestants, who have been listening to this interview while enjoying Jake's hospitality, exchange glances that communicate shared trauma. They came here thinking they were competing against other species' survival capabilities. Instead, they discovered they were being evaluated against human recreational activities. Home final question, Vrex says, gathering the remnants of his professional dignity. What are your plans after winning the challenge? Well, I've got 2 weeks of vacation left, Jake replies thoughtfully. I was thinking about doing some hiking in the northern mountains. I hear the views are incredible and it would be fun to try some alpine camping techniques. Alpine camping, Vrex says faintly. You know, high-altitude construction, dealing with extreme weather, maybe some ice climbing. I've been wanting to try building an igloo using advanced insulation principles. At this point, Judge Tylex approaches with documents that appear to have been hastily drafted and revised multiple times. Mr. Thompson, if we could have a moment. Sure thing, Jake replies agreeably. The judging committee has been in consultation with challenge organizers across the galaxy, Judge Tylex begins formally. In light of your performance, several changes are being implemented to future competitions. Okay, what kind of changes? First, the challenge will be renamed the Human Standard Camping Challenge, Judge Tylex announces with the air of someone reading his own professional obituary. Huh, Jake says. That seems unnecessary. Second, a new competition category will be established for non-human participants, with appropriately scaled expectations. That makes sense. Different species probably have different approaches. Third, Judge Tylex continues, his voice growing steadier as he reaches the part of his announcement he's most comfortable with. A new rule is being added to all future competitions. What's that? No humans allowed. Suisamichi. Jake blinks in surprise. Really? That seems kind of discriminatory. It's not discriminatory, Judge Vortana interjects, her crystalline form displaying patterns that suggest resigned acceptance. It's a matter of competitive balance. Allowing human participation in wilderness survival competitions is like allowing starships in atmospheric racing. We simply operate on fundamentally different scales, Judge Cromax adds. Your species' baseline recreational activities exceed our specialized survival training. I mean, if you say so, Jake replies, though he still looks puzzled. Honestly, I thought everyone would know this stuff. Seems pretty basic. 6 months later, Jake Thompson returns to his accounting job in Columbus, Ohio, largely unaware that he has become the most famous human in 16 star systems. His victory footage plays continuously on galactic survival networks, usually accompanied by commentary that ranges from awestruck admiration to existential despair. The Galactic Wilderness Survival Challenge continues under its new name, with participants who now understand that human involvement would fundamentally alter the nature of the competition. The current record holder managed to construct a lean-to that stayed upright for 3 consecutive days, an achievement that earns him universal acclaim and a cash prize. Jake occasionally receives interview requests from galactic media, most of which he politely declines because he's busy with tax season. When pressed for comment on his impact on interstellar survival competitions, he typically responds that he had a nice time and hopes everyone enjoyed themselves. He has, however, accepted an invitation to serve as a technical consultant for a new television series called Extreme Human Camping, which follows ordinary humans engaging in what they consider basic outdoor recreation. The show's popularity has led to a tourism boom, as alien species travel to Earth specifically to witness human survival techniques in person. The irony, lost on Jake but apparent to everyone else, is that his most extreme camping trip to date was actually the Galactic Wilderness Survival Challenge, and he found it so relaxing that he's been trying to plan a return visit to Verdania for his next vacation. His request to book a personal camping trip to the challenge location was denied for reasons the Tourism Bureau described as preserving planetary ecosystem integrity, but which everyone understands means preventing one human from accidentally terraforming an entire wilderness preserve. Jake remains mystified by this decision, though he's found several other planets that offer what he calls interesting camping opportunities. His travel itinerary for next year includes locations that galactic survival experts classify as uninhabitable deathworlds. When asked why he chooses such challenging destinations, Jake typically responds that the difficult locations offer better solitude and more interesting engineering problems. The galaxy has learned to live with the knowledge that what humans consider a relaxing hobby represents the absolute pinnacle of survival achievement for most other species. It's a humbling realization that has led to significant advances in interspecies cooperation, mostly because everyone now understands that keeping humans happy is probably good policy. After all, if this is what they do for fun, nobody really wants to see what humans consider serious infrastructure development. Jake Thompson, meanwhile, continues to file tax returns and plan camping trips, blissfully unaware that he has become the unofficial ambassador for human engineering capabilities, and the reason why several species have revised their colonization strategies to include mandatory human consultation. He did frame his winner's certificate from the challenge, though. It looks nice next to his collection of photos from various camping trips, including several that alien observers would classify as impossible survival scenarios, but which Jake simply calls that fun weekend in the mountains.